Good morning and welcome to another edition of the Daily Fix. I am your usual host and presenter, Advocate Tulo Oyani, always at your service on a daily basis. What do I have for you today? This morning, I want us to switch the clock back to a time when Advocate Ramusipili, on behalf of Bongani Ntanzi, I think this was a time when Advocate Ramusipili was still holding the fort for the late Advocate Tulani Mgomezulu. There was a time when Advocate Ramusipili said he will bring photo evidence on behalf of the defense of the park. You remember the so-called intruders that went into that house, according to the narrative of 636, ran to the park. Immediately after he said this, Baloyi stood up to object. Baloyi's objection was along the lines of saying, if the defense is going to lead any evidence, they must be able to back up that evidence with witnesses. In other words, that evidence will just be rendered hearsay. In other words, if Ramusipili wants to adduce evidence or to bring forward evidence relating to photographs taken of the park, he will have to produce that photographer. That is how it went. And the most interesting thing, and the most perhaps not even interesting, annoying thing is when Baloyi stood up to make that objection, he is fond of this business of reading and sort of lecturing the law to the defense advocates. I don't know why that is permitted to be happening in this court. But Baloyi stands up, in a very condescending attitude all the time, looking down to the defense as if, they don't know what they are there for, or trying to cast aspersions about their knowledge of the law. So he'll stand up there and lecture to them. So on this occasion, Baloyi stood up and raised that objection and read and read and read like he's fond of reading all the time. After making that objection, Bongani Ntanzi, accused number 2, approached Advocate Ramusipili and whispered something into his ear. Well, we are not privy to what that communication is, but we only became privy to what that conversation entailed when Ramusipili in fact acknowledged that it had been brought to his attention by none other than Bongani Ntanzi that this is what the prosecution has been doing throughout this trial. And now they are coming up with an objection, without basis, because that is what they've been doing. You'll recall that Gininda has been tendering hearsay evidence left, right, and center in this trial. And looking at the judge sitting there, this is probably why this trial is going to take such a long time. To control the proceedings and to be in charge of the proceedings, the presiding officer, the judge, must be seen to be, directing things. For instance, he's not supposed to allow, even before an objection comes, he's not supposed to allow hearsay evidence, which is pure hearsay evidence. Now, you'll recall that Gininda has been on the stand a number of occasions for a number of days, tendering evidence, right, that he had no first-hand knowledge of. In other words, Gininda is just reading reports made by other people, some of whom are dead. That is hearsay evidence, even if those people are alive. If those people are alive, why don't they come forward to come and testify? But conveniently for himself, Gininda leaves evidence of people who are no longer in this world. And that is highly prejudicial, and that is highly objectionable. The defense ought to strenuously object to this kind of evidence being laid before the Pretoria High Court because it is hearsay evidence. Gininda is supposed to be the lead investigator in this trial. But that does not give him the authority to come and adduce evidence about things he has no first-hand or personal knowledge of and purport to put them before the court as evidence. So this is just another indication of how Judge Ratamokgatling has lost control of the proceedings. He has completely lost the plot. He is not in charge. This trial is just going, for want of a better expression, or let me not use that expression. This trial is doomed to be an unfair trial because of this sort of things happening. So after that objection, which had been Advocate Ramusipili then indicated that Baloyi had been leading through Gininda hearsay evidence through the length and breadth of the trial. One wonders what will happen to all the evidence that Gininda has, tendered before that court, which is hearsay evidence, and hearsay evidence is inadmissible. Because you see, if you bring up hearsay evidence before a court of law, the veracity or the truthfulness of that evidence is in doubt. In other words, it cannot be established that evidence, or it becomes difficult under the circumstances, to cross-examine a witness that is not before the court, let alone these many witnesses that Gininda has talked about, which are already who are already dead. And you see, the interesting thing about Gininda, all these dead people, he has produced no death certificates for these dead people. Whether these people are really dead or are still alive. And these statements were written by Gininda on behalf of those people to push their narrative of 636 also remains in doubt because, if you say if you leave evidence, that hearsay evidence, and on the other hand, you do not even produce a death certificate to assure the court that, well, I am leading this hearsay evidence, judge, because this person has passed away, but at least it must be established that that person has actually passed away. For that Judge Ratamokgatling never questions things like that. So this was an interesting development because the fact that the prosecution had been leading this sort of evidence throughout the trial was brought to the attention of Ramusipili by an accused person. You see, whether you're an advocate or an attorney, there's a saying that two heads are better than one. You see, at that particular point in time, Ramusipili, after or in the face of the objection being made by Baloyi, didn't really have a way forward. of how to proceed. But in Ntanzi, you sitting there as an accused person, picked it up. He picked it up. Advocate in Ntanzi picked it up and said, my learned friend, here is something that you can bring up to the attention of this court on our behalf. So there you are. Ntanzi versus Baloyi. Ntanzi teaches Baloyi the law. I'll be looking into these aspects of the evidence, as I have promised in the past, as we unravel the mystery of the Senzo Meyiwa trial. Please keep tuning into the Daily Fix, and I'll be bringing you this daily, analysis and updates on the trial when it resumes. But in the interim, we'll be looking at aspects of the evidence, to get a holistic view. Some of these things have happened in the past. Some of them could have happened a year or two ago. But their relevance is we must get an understanding of the evidence. This is why I'm bringing them up. I'm not bringing them up because I'm saying they are breaking news. I told you this channel is not about breaking news. Yes, it is about news. But we go beyond the headlines to analyze the news, to say to ourselves or to my viewers, what does this evidence mean? What are the implications of all this? The mainstream media never does that. The mainstream media will just tell you that such and such a thing has happened somewhere, and that will be the end of the story. Not with the Daily Fix. The Daily Fix goes beyond the headlines to give you an understanding and appreciation of what is at stake. So there you have it. Ntanzi versus Baloyi. And Ntanzi won that round decisively. But interestingly, Judge Ratamukwaten did not seem to take that very seriously, in the light of the fact that, the defense was countering what Baloyi thought was a very brilliant, objection. So it says a lot about how this trial is conducted. That thing was just left to pass. And some of these things, I insist, the defense has got to take them up. Stand their ground. If need be, tell the judge that this is not the way it is supposed to be done. Because that is what you are there for. You have to be assertive, respectful, but above all, do what you have to do. So having said that, let me thank you for watching this video. The subscriptions are coming up in a very satisfactory manner. So are the views. Please don't skip those adverts, because, like I always jokingly say, they keep the home fires burning. Having said that, let me conclude this episode by saying, please have a nice day.